Here, what's up, bud? How are things at your end?
That's good, man. It's good. I was thinking about this quote by a friend of mine based in
Hmm.
San Diego, and it really hit me, which is different beats better every day of the week. Different beats better every day of the week. And if you look at a lot of the people that are leaders, one of the things I've noticed is that one way or another, they found a way to be different because
Hmm.
everybody can be better, but it's hard to be different, right? You can reach out to somebody and say, I'm a better interviewer than this person. I have a better following than this person. I have this, I have that, or I have a better product than this person, whatever that may be, right? If you focus on better, chances are there's always somebody that is better than you. But different, that is just a whole different playing field. And it's fascinating how not many people are trying to build on a different as opposed to build on a better. And yeah, that's just something I was thinking about as we were speaking.
I think I agree to that. Being different makes you quite unique as well in the game that you're trying to play in. And everyone wants to be better than someone else. But if you're really unique, then that is your competitive advantage, irrespective of which game you're trying to play. And once you have strengths that are very unique to you, right, you can actually take those strengths and play the game better. So definitely being different is good.
Here's an example. Okay, here's an example of what I mean by different. If you look at 2020, I mean that was a tsunami for businesses, right? Like a lot of them went under, not prepared. Some of them they were just legacy, like sort of systems and behaviors as an organization. They were not ready. They were not ready for what was coming, right?
Sure.
And one of the companies that stood out incredibly well, was Netflix.
Sure.
And if you go and look at Netflix's culture deck,
Hmm.
I think Netflix's and AWS's have the best culture decks I've encountered. But if you look at the principle of good judgment, and we spoke about this, right? The
Hmm.
ability to make the right decision despite the lack of or faulty information.
Sure.
Here is a company that has gotten itself to be prepared for something like this when no other company was able to do. Look at Quibi. They failed. Two
This
veterans, two veterans raised $1 billion, failed. Disney, they were trying to catch up. They did somewhat well because they had reserve of movies and films, but they couldn't produce any new ones. That everything else was hard to do. Netflix was shooting movies when nobody else was. Why? Because they built up to see that if something like this happened, we will be ready. And that requires an insane amount of good judgment. Good
and I think
judgment to think about something like this, good judgment to execute about something like this, and good judgment to apply something like this when nobody else would. And yeah, it's fascinating.
absolutely, and I think it's not like a matter of few years that Netflix really took off. It has been there for almost more than a decade. They have been, playing the long game for a long time. They have a, I think 2012 or 2013, they started with their culture deck, and everyone who gets assimilated within the Netflix ecosystem as an employee usually goes through that particular, culture deck as well. So if you're, it's very inclusive culture over there, but definitely the decision making skills over there that are required by leaders is that it has to be very strategic in nature. And definitely any new age company that merely wants to make an impact in the coming years have to be very forward thinking, and it has to be embracing a lot of new age emerging technologies, right? So Netflix, it's a cloud phenomena, right? I mean, Blockbuster was there for decades in the US. Netflix came in, it's just like, killed it.
Here's the thing though. If I was to be asked this question, and I believe is tremendously hard, right? And I'll try, actually I'll try and ask you that first. Um, in one word, what do you think is the important, single most important value to have to be able to succeed in creating a community? Single most important value to possess to creating a successful community early on?
Oh, you're putting me on spot. So I think definitely I'll go for being empathy man. I would tell you a lot of other skills that you need to have, other important elements or ingredients to create a successful community. But as a newbie starting in the community space, definitely you'll have to be very empathetic. Community is a different beast altogether. You cannot buy communities. You cannot actually create community one fine day with getting hundreds of thousands of audience. But as a community leader or a community artist, you'll have to be very empathetic towards your entire community members. Everyone who really comes into your community is someone who is coming to your home. And the way you actually treat them when someone comes to your home is the way you treat your guests. You have to be very respectful. You'll have to be very inclusive. You'll also have to be very kind to them in your words, irrespective of what they have. I mean, their point of view or their alternative point of view might be crisscrossing your thought process as well, your long-term strategy as well. But you'll have to be very kind and empathetic, because that's a very amazing leadership skill for a community leader. And that's where the community will thrive, if you have empathy at the core of the community building.
That's an interesting answer. What's the funny thing from my side is I have more questions than answers. And the interesting thing about asking questions and not having answers is it really makes you think as to, out of all of those questions, which are really the most impactful ones, right? Because you were right when you say empathy, and I could think of Angela Ahrendts, right?
Mm-hmm.
The former VP of retail sales at Apple. She had this philosophy of asking her advisors, which are part of the community she helped build at Burberry and then helped contribute to it at Apple,
Mm-hmm.
of driving emotional intelligence, but at the same time coming up with ideas and asking her advisors or her colleagues to confuse her with facts. So putting that empathy is incredibly important. Now, funny enough, I asked that very same question to a VP of VP at Salesforce, and his answer was trust. His answer was that everything sits at the heart of trust. If you don't have trust, you don't have a community. And uh, when you get more answers, you get more questions, right? But the thing about the answer of trust is it's hard. How do you measure trust?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then that's really something that I was interested in, is understanding how do people measure those things that they deem to be the most important. I think that is one of the hardest things to do when you build a community. But if you ask me, it's also a question of timing. I
Mm-hmm.
think the value of timing is incredibly important, because you could have the best product, the best community, the best idea. If the timing isn't there, no matter what you do, it will run against you. It will make it super hard for you to launch and to make a success out of it. And that's something that I think um, communities like Rev Genius, for example, I've
Mm-hmm.
seen it grow with my own bare eyes. They're a community of salespeople,
Mm-hmm.
and I know the co-founder, and they went from 20 people in a private LinkedIn group
Mm-hmm.
to over 18,000 in a year.
Got
And
it.
that was because of the COVID. They just lacked interaction and engagement and wanting to be part of something and contribute. And that spurred a lot of other communities. And yeah, this is just it's interesting. It really
That
is.
brings me to the core of the question as to what is a community. I mean, how do you define a community, right? You rightly mentioned that, asking questions is an art, and sometimes a man is judged by the questions they ask. And some philosopher added another tinge to it, saying that, a man is judged not just by the questions they ask, but some of the questions they ask to themselves. Now, trust comes at that particular core where you actually ask those questions to yourself, right? When you are a part of a community and you become a community member, whichever community it may be, geographically distributed or it could be in any part of the world, the questions that you ask to yourself are very important and pertinent. For example, why do you want to be part of the community? Are you looking out for other community members and you want to learn from these community members? Are you planning to, there's a concept of pay it forward. Do you want to contribute back to the community? Are you a giver or are you a taker or are you a simple matcher? So Adam Grant rightly said, right, in any of the community that you are part of, right, there are people who are givers who tend to give and give. There are people who are takers who receive and receive. And there are people who are matchers who actually, give exactly to the same amount they receive. So it depends on what kind of community member you are and what kind of questions you ask to yourself to define that the trust level is rightly intact at the core. So these are very important questions that we need to all delve deep into while defining communities.
Yeah, let me ask you this: who do you think built the greatest community out there today? If
in the
I may
history
put
of
you on the
mankind,
spot,
or in the professional world,
in the professional world, in the modern age, just to make it more sort of focused, who do you think up until today has created the single most effective, most brilliant, most long lasting community?
I think at this point in time, the Bitcoin crypto community is really strong. For the last 11, 12 years, the community members are rooting for the success of Bitcoin. It just started from a research paper. It just floated around in different circles. And the crypto wave is right now at the highest peak, right? I think early this year, January, I remember Bitcoin was trading at somewhere around $36,000. And right now it is just, going through the roof. And therefore, there are a lot of other peripheral communities around the crypto ecosystem, including the Ethereum and the other networks as well. So definitely one of the amazing communities that I could foresee or I can predict going forward is the crypto community that we have in the world, because the community members are really staunch community members. They really love the product. They love the concept. They love the concept of decentralization, where they are questioning the fundamental stones of our democracy. They're questioning banks. They're questioning countries, so much so that if you go to US and different parts of the world, people are actually getting into different hubs as well. After the legalization at El Salvador, 2 days back, there was legalization of crypto in Ukraine as well. So now these communities are just not entering into small hubs in where people are congregated, but they're entering into countries. When was the last time you actually saw a community capturing the entire country? El Salvador, Ukraine.
Wow.
There will be a lot of Latin American countries, and tomorrow it will be a global phenomenon. The only thing that I can think of for the last 10, 12 years is definitely the crypto community. And that's definitely one of the strongest thing in my point of view. What about you? What are your thoughts on those?
Wow. Wow. Um, I would like to say that this is the first time I hear of this. That communities entering an entire country. I thought that's yeah, that hit me hard, because that was really really interesting. The way you framed that, because it's true, right? Like here is the thing though. When you talk about a community like Bitcoin that has been growing and growing and growing, and I agree with you 100%. There are people that don't even sell their Bitcoin. They just hold it. I was like, I don't want to sell. There are people that have had Bitcoins for the past 5 years, 10 years, 2 years, 1 year, whoever buys, they just want to keep it, which is really, really hard to see, right? In today's day where everything has a price, it's hard to see that somebody believes in something at a long term as opposed to short term gain. And it's just fascinating um, how consolidated that is. And like you said, it's because of a community. But here's the thing, though. When you look at a community, you always associate the community with a leader, right? You look at a branch of leadership or a common leader that helps ensure the sustained integrity and values of what Bitcoin is. And that's where there is a lot of question marks when it comes to Bitcoin, at least in my side, is who are the leaders of that community to ensure that that community will remain as integral, as sustainable, as valuable, um, 10 years, 20 years from now as it is today. And I just don't know the answer to that because I find it hard to think of a community that is decentralized yet still so compact and aligned, and operating for such a long time. I don't know any other. I mean, if you have any other, tell me. I just don't. I don't.
I
I don't.
think
And honestly, I don't think you could imitate that. That's the other thing. I think this is so unique as of a case that I just don't know, if you can find another time in place where you would be able as a company as opposed to, to be able to build something like that.
I think
Yeah.
communities, in my point of view, are a, it's not an audience, right? I mean, there are concepts of centralized communities which are housed within enterprises, within companies, within startups, right?
Yeah.
Which are
Yeah.
owned by bigger enterprises. But if you are owned by a bigger enterprise and if you are trading in a publicly listed entity, then what happens is that usually you are governed by the rules of the land as well, right?
Yeah.
But in a decentralized community, there is no land. I mean, the groups are there or scattered in different parts of the world. So that's
Yeah.
like a global community. It is not governed by a particular country or the rules of let's say Southern California or US, or let's say some part in the Asia Pacific does not apply to that community. And that's the true essence of a global community, because those are not ruled by the rules of the land. So that's a unique play. And especially like last year, right? It was a pandemic year, 2020 and beyond. I foresee that there will be a lot of global communities that will be coming in a decentralized manner itself. I mean, 2 days back, I was talking to Alex Liberman, who is founder of Morning Brew, and there was another gentleman, Eric, who is the founder of Try Carrot, and they were talking about communities and creator coins as well. So that was a fundamental question that I asked, that going forward, the 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 leverage or the power of the community lies in the hands of community members. And how do you structure those community members? Whether those have to be like tiered structure, a pyramid kind of structure, whether there's a leader at the top and there are like foundational blocks governed by managers, leaders, etc. Is that the right way? Or do you have power based on the number of community coins that you hold, and those community coins can only be earned and not given? Now, the way you earn those community coins is by contributing back to the community. Now, just to give you an example, right? I'm part of an amazing community in the Silicon Valley. It is called an On Deck. Now, On Deck has a great ecosystem that has been built by a gentleman by the name of Eric Torenberg, who runs a fund called as Village Capital. Now, the way they have structured their community is that at the core, there are chief evangelists of certain streams. And these are the evangelists who are responsible for hiring the best talent across the world in a particular stream. Now, once you hire the first level of leaders for your particular stream in a community, the community's culture code gets shaped up. Now, once the community's culture code gets shaped up, that gives the direction of the community as to where that community will be heading towards. So the best way of building community is definitely decentralized. And the second best way is to find the leaders who are aligned to the bigger purpose of the community. And definitely, I mean, countries at a point in time were communities by themselves, irrespective of which country we come from, because you get aligned to a particular vision of that particular country, and then you become a member of that country basis of your birth or basis of your physical proximity, because you get aligned to the governing principles of that country. Now, those things are again going for a toss, as Elon Musk says, that we are just not Earthians in the coming future. We will be an intergalactic species, which questions us that whether there will be communities built in the Martian realm as well. And those are very fundamental and very sci-fi kind of questions that are being debated heavily as we speak in this world. So the concept of community is fluid and it is not very static to a particular time. These are my initial thoughts.
No, it's interesting. It's fascinating because especially when you talk about coins being earned, not given. Um, it's something that I think would help push a community towards really greatness. But here's the back end question, right? To every great thing there is a back door, right? And I'm just
Mm-hmm.
playing devil's advocate there. Um, who sits out to define what is good and what is not, what is earned and what is not, what is valuable and what is not? How do you measure that? How do you measure the impact of um, what is contribution, and those are questions that are very hard to be able to answer them with no bias. So when you look at people that are looking to contribute, what's to say that those people that are looking to contribute will see that their hard earned efforts are justifiably sort of merited or rewarded with the right level of say coins. I'm just going in deep into the question, and the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
reason I say this is when you look at community, the first thing you look at is retention and engagement, right? How engaged is the community? How many people are within the community in the first year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year? One of the interesting things is that usually what happens is when one of those hardcore performers, go givers, contributors that you look up to leaves, that not only leaves a tremendous gap within the community to be filled, but it reflects negatively on the leadership at the top, which then
Mm-hmm.
poses a lot of questions that may then take the merits of holding a coin earned based system and put that into question, which then causes divergence, which then causes distractions, right? So these are the questions that I've always been curious about. Is you always see this in the news, you always see this in everything. Um, it's 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 easy to find the bad things about something, but it's hard to then say, you know what, I'm just going to look at the positive. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
state of mind that I see in a lot of communities is you have that one or two champions, and then you secretly have those 15 people that are just trying to bash trash down the community somehow, somewhere, somewhat, for some weird reason. They seem to have attention. They seem to gain attention. Um, and that's something that I think big companies that have been there for a long time that have had that
Mm-hmm.
learning curve to
Mm-hmm.
mitigate against something like this
Sure.
have defined a structure in place to help defeat that. But when
Mm-hmm.
I think about somebody like us, for example, that is starting a community tomorrow, how do you do that? Right? Because a lot of what we just spoke about, the execution and the operational how are all trade secrets. And nobody, I mean, yes, you do have people that write sort of a lot and extended sort of wisdom, but to go about finding those companies that really have the operational how put at hand on how to create a community that can be
Mm-hmm.
self-sustained, that can grow, that can be earned based and retain everybody and engage everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and to start from nothing, that's hard. I don't know that there is a set process. And those that do have that, that's a trade secret as good as Coca-Cola or Pepsi, right? So that's the interesting thing to see in the future is how many of these small companies that are trying to compete by creating communities now will be able to do that, because it seems like if you don't have a community, there's a higher chance of you failing, which adds up a stack of new things to to need to be able to succeed. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I think communities. I mean, how do you define a community is it's a very tricky question as well. For example, just to draw analogy to the creator coins to your fiat currency. For example, you have a fiver with you, right? Now,
Yeah,
the £5 that you earned by doing something, right? Either creating a product or giving a service in your
yeah,
current economy, right? So over there, you are trusting the legal authority as well as the financial authority of the country that you reside in, that the fiver will be honored Do you understand? Which means that
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
if tomorrow you earn a fiver and you start questioning that whether my fiver will be honored actually in a transaction or in a barter system or in a economic system, right? So just translate that particular analogy to a creator coin. For example, obviously there is no central institution that could actually, and institutions are all biased. If there is an institution,
Yeah.
that institution is always biased.
Yeah.
And if you have a creator coin economy, then definitely you'll have to, keep it very decentralized, where the leaders of the particular community can be in different geographies. Some could be anonymous as well, but they are all aligned to the common vision and the goal and the purpose of that particular community as to where the community
Yeah.
wants to head towards. So these are very early stages of decentralization, and I foresee that in the next few years, there's a huge boom coming in the decentralized community,
Yeah.
right? The privacy and anonymity are really being debated big time in this post-pandemic world, where the big tech is
Yeah.
really ruling a lot of lives of people, right? People are getting nudged by different big tech applications, and their
Yeah.
life is getting manipulated without them knowing about it. So how do you actually protect yourself from all the
True.
technological nudges and still live in the society with the advantages that come with it, are something that everyone needs to think about. But definitely I'm really gung-ho about the decentralized ecosystem, because these are the ecosystems where
Yeah.
you believe in the trust code of the network. And the network cannot lie to you entirely, right? Because a network has multiple nodes, and there's a high possibility that if you are in a network of 1 million nodes, some of the 1,000 nodes could be defunct. Those would
Mm.
be the rotten ones. But 1 million nodes cannot be defunct, right? I mean, the trust comes from the network, not from the node. And that's how the future of
That's
communities will be
that's
shaping towards.
that's really really interesting. I like the analogy of the nodes. That makes a lot of sense. Actually, because it was gonna tap into the last question I had, which was, how do you balance time with trust? Because usually to earn trust takes time. So,
Mhm.
um, that's and here's the problem, right? To earn trust, it takes time, but it reminds me this old quote, and please forgive me, I don't know who said it, I just know I heard it once, it's stuck in my head, which is it takes years to build a building and 5 minutes to bring it down, right? And that's
True.
the problem with trust, is it takes a long time to build and earn it, but it takes 5 seconds to lose it, or 5 minutes to lose it, right? So it's a question of time. And that brings me back to my first year of microeconomics and the term opportunity cost, right? Do I spend all of this time to build this trust? And what happens if that trust is being breached? Do I lose? Do I keep up going? Or do I actually sort of, and that's really a question, right? Because when you're a small startup, or when you're a business that is required now today to be able to build a community that can outlast and that can help support you, one of the biggest problems is you will have to go at it for 2 3 years before you get something, that is stable, that is concrete enough. And the
Sure.
problem there is, what if majority of those people leave, and then that trust is being breached? Then you lose everything. And when you look at those 3 years, you see, I wasted 3 years trying to build something. So it forces a lot of people to then think twice before they build a community. Um, and it's interesting to
I
to
think
see those that fail, what they learned from it more than what they succeeded on doing. Because I think there's a lot to fail for before you get to build a outlasting community, in my opinion.
I have an alternative viewpoint on that, actually, Nadir. You cannot, people don't build communities, right? A person cannot be the sole owner of a community. It's very difficult, right? Community members build community, right? The right set of people who congregate together and get into a box are the guys who will be building the community, right? And the person who has started a community or had come up with the idea of a community would just be a guardian angel. supporting the community as the community grows, right? So there's a concept in leadership that says that the best leaders are the one who actually bring in the right set of people and then just get out of the way. So a community leader's objective is to get the right set of people so that they, talk to the other community members, and he just gets out of the way. He or she gets out of the way, and that way you can actually nurture the relationships between all the nodes that are getting created in those communities, right? Every trusted community member becomes a node in the initial days, and that's how they build the future of that particular community. So people build communities. Not a single person can build a community. So what you could do is that, as a leader in the coming years and the coming times, is that you need to have a purpose and a vision for your community as to where the community wants to go towards, where the benefits are really, entrusted upon all the community members. So once you have those things structurally created, and where of course you can gamify and put the validation and the appreciation structure into encoded into that community, then it will be really beneficial for all the community members. But definitely, I think it's more of an art and than a science. I think some communities with all the best ingredients still fail, and some of the communities out of nowhere just multiply and just become massive. So it's more of an art.
But here's the thing, right? And I agree 100%. I think you make a strong case, and I would find anybody. I think it would be extremely hard for anybody to debate against what you said. But here's what I initially meant. I I've had a chance to look at people building communities in the past year. Okay, on Clubhouse, on Slack, on, I mean, you name it, Mighty Networks and Charge for It. It's just there's so many communities that people want to build on, and some look at a business model behind creating the community. Some look at leading the community to be able to have a strong backbone to sell the products or services, and some are just genuinely looking to build something that can contribute, but equally is very hard when you don't have a tangible or intangible outcome that people can sort of look at every time they participate with that community. Here's the problem I have with building a community, and you saying that it's not just one person, and I'm saying that you are right. There are also other ways in how people view community. I'll give you a brief example. I'm not going to name names out of respect. I'm not going to name anything, but just to give you a bit of a context. Imagine you create a community and you start to slowly indulge and allow for others to take leadership charge to help grow that community, right? So you learn about delegation, right? You delegate, which is essentially what you were saying, right? You delegate responsibility to people that genuinely care for the cause, and you allow for that shared leadership through delegation to ensure that the core is not broken. And as I was seeing this community being built, one of the things that started happening with time is ego and self-interest. And I know that you say that it's all about picking the right people, but that's not always the case, right? We're talking about a hyperbola of very few limited people that have that high level of good judgment, high level of network, high level of talented people that can reach out to. But that's not the case for every community that is being built out there, right? And what I was seeing was everybody kept coming with a different agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, it became more of an internal fight than a common alignment. And here's the last point I'll make on this is I spoke to an author. His name is Phil Johnson. He trades in helping companies develop emotional intelligence and build their sales team with that core principle at hand. And he wrote a book about servant leadership, right? Being a servant leader. And he gave this. He mentioned a statistic that caught his eye, which was that if you look at all of the organizations out there, on average, only 12% of the employees within those organizations whose why, personal why, aligns with the company's why, which then tells you that around 88% of the people's personal why does not align with the company's why. And that's what you'll see also in communities is that you need to rely on the fact that the people that are the leadership at the top, their why is aligned with that of the community. But at the same time, that is very, very hard. It's very, very hard to say that every community that is being created have an alignment of 100% between the personal why of the people that are leading that community and the community itself. I think is hard to prove. And the reason I say it's hard to prove because I can come up with like 15 cases up top of my head that I've seen personally. But yeah, that's what I meant.
Sure. I think my closing remarks on that would be that whether it is Mighty Networks, Clubhouse, or a bunch of other applications or enterprise grade products that are claiming to be community, building applications are just books, empty books with empty pages. The people who are coming in are the people who are filling in those pages. So again, my argument would rest on that the first set of 10 to 20 to 100 people that really join the community are the people who are actually shaping the vibe of the community. And definitely the bias would be there because once you have once the community scales, what happens is that there will be a lot of ego tussles and a lot of those crisscross connections of viewpoints as well that will happen. But definitely the people who have joined early on the community, right, they have a legitimate early rights as opposed to the people who are joining late in the community. And how do you argue whether this particular community member has higher rights? Is because this particular community member has really contributed more to the success of the community, right? So that's one of the ways where all the referral structures within the communities are getting shaped up as well. For example, if you are the first community evangelist brought into a particular community and you are working with 3 or 4 people, then you have the right to actually bring another 10 people back to the community who would shape the vibe of the community. And these things, the vision, the mission, as well as the operational steps have to be really codified and put it in a very structured network.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree 100%. I think you said it best. That's great.
I think I'm ending. Oops. How do I stop end meeting for all?